Hi, YouTubers. It is time to stop the music, is what it is. I'm learning. It is Tuesday, May 10th, 2016. So much to talk about, so little time. Going to do a little different show than I normally do today, in that I'm going to use two other people's YouTube work. You know, when you're lazy. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, I'm not interested in getting credit for breaking some of these stories. Obviously, in this case, I'm not breaking either one of those stories. But some of the insights I will give you, you don't hear on the mainstream media for sure. And in other cases, you're not hearing it at all unless you hear it on this channel. So I appreciate you stopping by. I appreciate you watching. Please subscribe if you get a chance. And let us know that you're out there. A couple of things I want to talk about here real quick. I'm only going to skim over it. Feel free to Google anything I talk about. First off, Mount St. Helens. Mount St. Helens is becoming active again. There are innumerous earthquakes in the region around Mount St. Helens. It is starting to bulge again. Some of you remember the last time that went. But the bigger picture is the earthquakes that are taking place around the world, not just the Ring of Fire, but even in the Atlantic Ocean. It's just, I'm telling you, folks, it's all coming to pieces. I might show you this little cartoon. I didn't write this cartoon either, but it's a guy eating popcorn while he watches the world burn. That's the way I feel right now. The only thing I regret about this cartoon is that the guy's not reading a Bible. There it is. Like I said earlier, if you didn't laugh, you'd have to cry. But the Bible literally told us all this stuff is going to be happening. I'm just absolutely amazed. It's one of the reasons why I started this channel. I want to be able to get the message out and get the word out while we still have a chance. I don't think that channels like mine are going to be allowed on the internet much longer, but that's a subject for another day. Not to fear. For those of us who know the Lord, He promises us to see us through. Doesn't promise us that everything's going to be peaches and roses, as you hear me say in my sermons sometimes, but He will see us through. Okay, so lots of earthquakes, Mount St. Helens. I could talk about the radiation leak, which is even 10 times worse up there at the, what's it called, Hamilton up there in Washington State. It's not contained. It's out of control. You're not hearing a word about it on the mainstream media, of course. And then we've got this blast that we've taken from the sun. And I'm going to use it, again, like I said, it's the first time I'm ever going to use other people's work or their other videos in this video. But there's a channel I subscribe to called Suspicious Observers, or Suspicious Observer. I think it's plural. At any rate, highly recommend the guy's channel. I'll obviously put a link up here. I appreciate his intake on the sun, which is blasting the earth right now. And we're not hearing anything about it. Now, you may. I saw one article that said, ooh, the northern lights, they might be visible as far south as Pennsylvania this week. As if that's a good thing. Folks, that means that the protective atmospheric protection that goes around the earth right now, protecting us from solar radiation, is displaced, weakened, not as strong as it should be. The blast is stronger than it should be. All kinds of stuff happening. I'm not a scientist. I'm just tipping you off to this. Take a look at this video and then we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about it.
Good morning, folks. The strong geomagnetic storms are continuing and the effects are numerous and widespread across the expected sectors. We're going to dive right into it. Beginning at spaceweathernews.com and checking out the last day on our star and 193 angstroms, remaining filament structures on the north are holding firm and begin to turn towards the departing limb with the dark transequatorial coronal hole. The Earth-facing solar quiet effect continued. Sunspot center disk were calm but for minor surface surging that did not produce any ejecta. The solar flaring remained down in the dumps, not much going on, and when we come to the sunspots we see that they are spread magnetically. Beta polarity exists, but not in any close proximity, and we've also got some new spots on the north near the incoming limb. Last week of our star in 211 angstrom shows the set of coronal holes that swung past Earth. Last two ended up merging, but the multiple IMF openings have forced multi-shockwave coronal hole streams that impacted consecutively over the last 3 days, driving level 3 geomagnetic storms across the planet, with isolated events actually hitting level 4. As plasma continues blasting the upper atmosphere, we'll look at the top storm effect candidates. As the disruptions were beginning, a transformer blew in India, exact type of scenario we watch for. Sadly, this one burned a man alive. We saw multiple events like this one where train service was cut for hours due to electrical problems. On average, there is slightly less than one small plane crash per day, but once again we see a surge in aircraft trouble during powerful solar-driven disturbances to our planet's magnetic field. One of those landed on a roof in California. Better candidates involve increased Indian load shedding like we see with every solar storm, except this time the outage was long enough to kill someone at a local hospital due to ventilator failure. The static electricity warnings when you're pumping fuel get a big boost during solar storms, as these folks in Sudan found out yesterday when ignition appeared to come out of nowhere, and then it spread to cause a tremendous explosion that could be seen across the Nile. But folks, those aren't even the top candidates. I couldn't possibly hope to put them all in this news video, but the electrical fires and power disruptions surged by a factor of 10 on Mother's Day on engines like Google and Bing. Surely not all of these can actually be blamed on the sun. Things happen, but once again, we see an unfathomable increase in these reported events during the strong electromagnetic disruptions, wires even snapping under clear blue skies. The one spot of good news is that this coronal hole score for earthquake production, which showed a strong tendency for induction this past week, was completely overshadowed and had its energy stolen by our planetary shield. Apart from only mid-level earthquakes, a couple volcanoes is all we have to see, but the Northeast Pacific gives us reason to keep watching, as another volcano nearby, Mount St. Helens, is undergoing magma refilling as an earthquake swarm is intensifying beneath the mountain. Other news is weather. This is a tornado that ripped through Colorado this weekend. Reports like this came in through Oklahoma, and tonight things are expected to get rough once again. Low in the west driving that convergence on its eastern edge, and that's where the storms will be tonight. We're going to have a deeper look out for you today with Billy and I discussing that electricity and plasma experiment we showed in the news yesterday. It'll be episode 39 of the year thus far. We've got pressure and radar forecasts for Europe, Down Under, South America, and Africa. Also got some shots of our star to close. It's 4 a.m. in the new Valley of the Sun. Eyes open, no fear. Be safe, everyone.
Like I said, that's Suspicious Observer, and I highly recommend his channel. This guy, I don't know if Dr. Ben is a scientist. I guess he is. Very reputable. Not a Christian, but very reputable in his information. I've never found him not to be accurate. I've learned more about the relationship between our sun and the Earth's atmosphere and earthquakes and polar shifts. You can Google that one too. The North Pole, the magnetic north is moving south 10 times faster than what scientists ever thought would happen. It's happening fast. My personal theory is that when the poles shift in the earth, and they are going to shift sooner or later, they say it happens about every, I don't know what they say. Well, I don't want to guess, but they do say it happens every couple of thousand years. Talked to a buddy of mine who actually still works for the FAA. Poor guy, still working for the government. Good Christian man. But he told me he could not confirm that airports are changing their headings. I guess that's what they're called, for runways. He can't confirm that they're changing them any faster than they normally do, but just the fact that they're changing the magnetic headings. In other words, instead of runway 180, it's now runway 190, and I think he told me they go in 10-degree increments, but that's a magnetic, I'm not a pilot, but that's a magnetic course, a magnetic heading, and those are changing. Why? Because magnetic north, which does shift from time to time, it's not shifting, folks, it's moving. You can Google that on your own, and you'll see it's just a fact, folks. Our protection from God, as I warned you when President Obama refused to veto a resolution against Israel a couple weeks ago. I warned you in one of my videos, our protection from God has been lifted. And I told you in that video, everything that happens in the next couple of months, whether it's pestilence like the Zika virus, or the dollar crashing, or earthquakes, or magnetic storms like you saw in that video, crashing into the earth, it's all because your president, President Barack Hussein Obama, is an enemy of Israel. God's very clear. He will bless those that bless Israel, and he will curse those who curse Israel. All right, before I get to the main story, I just want to tell you something else you probably haven't heard about, but there is a bill that just came out of committee. It's out of committee. Now it's getting ready to go to the House floor that will require, are you ready for this? I wish I had a drum roll. It will require women 18 years of age to register for the draft. This is your new military under Barack Hussein Obama and Hillary, the thief and the liar, Rodham Clinton. Let me just read you this article. This is from the Washington Post, real quick, so you know. This is April 28th, 11 days ago. The House Armed Service Committee took a big and unexpected step towards making women register for the draft as a handful of Republicans joined Democrats on Wednesday night to back a measure whose own sponsor hoped it would fail. Now, isn't that special? He promoted a piece of legislation hoping it would fail. This is our government, folks, but story for another day. Right now, the draft is sexist, said Republican Duncan Hunter, and I've met Duncan Hunter a few times. He's actually a good guy, who filed an amendment to the House Annual Defense Authorization Bill to require women between the ages of 18 and 26 to register for the Selective Service, the government agency that keeps records of who is eligible to be drafted. Conscripted, I guess is the fancy word. Hunter, who is against the Obama administration's recent policy change, allowing women to serve in all combat roles. Folks, your president is treating the military like it's a social experiment. Women, now look, I have no problem with women who can meet the qualifications, but it's a physical, natural fact. Women are about 15% smaller, they have about 15% less body mass, and I don't know about you, but if it came down to the safety of my family, my friends, my grandsons, if it came down to a trained, hardened Navy SEAL, Delta Force, or a woman who had to have the standards lowered, saving my grandchildren, guess who I'm going to pick? I'm not a sexist. My goodness, I raised 3 daughters. That's a whole other story. Anyway, Hunter, who was against the Obama administration's recent policy change, allowing women to serve in all combat roles, said he proposed the measure only to start a discussion about the draft. He voted against his own amendment, arguing anyone who favored it would be siding with the administration. But Hunter's gamble, get this, that committee members would shy away from forcing women into the draft backfired when a slim majority, including 5 Republicans, opted to endorse the measure by a vote of 32 to 30. Isn't that special? So now this is going to come up to the House. I don't know where it's going to go from here. My guess is nothing's going to happen prior to the election, if there is an election, only because, there will be, Hillary, The only campaign leg that she has to stand on is the fact that she's a woman and other women should vote for her because she's a woman, and it's time for a woman to be president. My goodness, what difference does it make? What gender, color? I don't care. As long as they're competent and as long as they're qualified, which neither of those qualified to our current president, our current commander-in-chief, but that's a whole other story. Look, this is what I want to tell you about. This is huge, folks, and I'm telling you, it's under the radar, but these spy towers, which are disguising as cell towers, are popping up all over the United States, specifically in the Southwest. This is the same tower that we've been talking about, popping up all over the country. Right now, I'm in southern Arizona, where I live. That way is Tucson. That way is the border with Mexico. This is one of those secret towers that are popping up all over the country, specifically in the Southwest. Talk a little bit more about that when I get back into the studio. No, there is no studio, it's just my house. But at any rate, this is the deal. It's the real deal. These are not cell towers, even though they'll try and tell you they're cell towers. And the reason why we know that is because we've questioned all of our friends who use AT&T, Sprint, Verizon, any other cell phone carriers. Nobody's signal down here, and we have lousy cell coverage. Nobody's signal has been strengthened since this tower went up. I'm going to have my camera lady just show you how they've tried to, they're not really trying to hide it, but go ahead and take all the way up. You can see they try and make it as inconspicuous as possible. This is a military facility. As she brings the camera back down, I want you to see it uses an inordinate amount of power. And as we've seen from documents and the PDF documents from government websites, these are to help troops, which will eventually be stationed here, communicate probably with Washington, D.C. Fort Huachuca is not far from here. Davis-Monthan is not far. Folks, I'm telling you, they're closing in on us. It's starting to happen. I'm going to go back to the studio right now. We're going to talk a little bit more about this. Thanks, and God bless. These are military towers. I'm going to use another video right now from another channel that I recommend, Dabu7, because he's got the skinny. He's got the paperwork. Like I said, I don't care who gets credit. I'm not here to get credit. I'm here to spread the news. And then, most importantly, I'm here to spread the good news of Jesus Christ. But we'll talk about that at the end. Pay attention to this video. This guy knows what he's talking about. Another one on YouTube that I have found to be extremely, if not 100% accurate, 100% of the time.
This is Dabu7. I want to share with you guys here some images that was sent in to me by an anonymous follower that says that he was working at a hotel in Kingman, Arizona, when he had a man enter into the front lounge and say, "Look, I just came in, got a room, but I need somewhere to park this tower." And he had to go outside with him and try to figure out a place for him to put the tower. Well, amongst the conversation, he picked up details that the guy kept referring to these towers as spy towers, that they were military surveillance spy towers. And the guy took several photos and said that there were sections to where it looked like it unfolded and would erect up to about 100 foot tall. And after looking at several of these images and seeing that there's military grade spy towers being moved around by independent contractors in Arizona, it's something to make note of. Now, if you go and you look, the PSSG, they are towers. It's a surveillance system. And it says U.S. Army training document. If you go into this, into the PDF, you're going to see it goes to the Department of Army. And it talks about how this has been approved. And it was developed as a sustainment program for assets in the theater. Okay, now these towers, go back to some of these images. Here is another image. They're not the best, but they show you what it looks like here. You can see that these towers have a number on them. You can actually see it here in this first one that was right there on the bottom right-hand corner. And here is a zoomed up version. The PSSG Tower. This is a surveillance piece of equipment. So, what it's worth, I want to make people well aware that, this isn't just like any old military equipment being spotted. We have independent contractors that have admitted in a conversation with the guy running this hotel that they are moving these around the country quietly and that they are indeed spy towers. All you got to do is a little bit of research on the numbers here, and thankfully this guy went out and got these photos, and we know that they're at least floating around in the Kingman, Arizona area. This is very recently. I'm not going to name the hotel specifically because the person fears that they would zero in on him. So there it is, these surveillance spy towers, and it's exactly what they are, being moved around by independent contractors quietly, at least in Arizona, and by his own admission in the conversation, around the country. So if you guys see any type of equipment like this whatsoever, make note now of what it looks like. That way, if you see one in a parking lot, you see one stationed somewhere, you know that this is a surveillance tower, not just any old piece of equipment. And if you can, snap some photos, send them in to me. I'll share them with everyone else, and we'll keep track of where we're seeing these things. So this is what one looks like, folded up in the parking lot where the guy parked it. If we can get some images of these things erected up and operational in certain areas, that would be key too. But make note, I got a funny feeling we're going to see more of this. Don't have much of a link to leave. Like I said, this was sent in direct message to me, email with these images, and the person wants to remain anonymous. But shout outs to everyone out there that continues to send information into me. I'll continue to share it. We got to stay on top of things like this, but this one is a very interesting one, if you ask me. This has been Dabu 7. Eyes open.
So there you have it, folks. I'm telling you. And I've got one right here in my own backyard. And as I explained, they're not cell towers. They are spy towers being used for the troops that are in theater. That means that this area, at least this area where I live, sooner or later they are planning on it being occupied with military troops. Those towers will be used to communicate with base, whether it's Davis-Monthan, Fort Huachuca, or Washington, D.C. I have no idea. Folks, it's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine. Why do I feel fine? Because I know the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, Jesus Christ, my Savior. Folks, if you don't have a personal relationship with God through His Son, Jesus Christ, let me beg you, let me implore you to consider your options. You only get one chance. There's only this reincarnation stuff, that's a bunch of hooey. You only get one shot. You're put on this earth. Whether you believe it or not makes no difference to me whatsoever. You're put on this earth to make a decision about the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, Jesus Christ. Yea or nay? Do you accept His sacrifice on the cross for the forgiveness of your sins? Or are you just going to say, there's nothing I can do, forget about it? Hey, God bless you, folks. We'll see you soon. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. It really is. Please subscribe. Send this to your friends. We'll see you soon. I do feel fine.